The ship came out of faster-than-light travel with a soft hum. Captain Tay stood at the front window of the Times, Horizon Times, and looked at the planet below. It was blue and green, like Earth, but it was not Earth. It was very far from Earth. "Sir, all readings are coming in now," said Hannah. She was the ship's botanist, a young woman with sharp eyes and a careful way of speaking. Her fingers moved fast over her screen. "Oxygen levels are perfect. Water is clean. Temperature is good for humans." Tay did not move. He kept looking at the planet. In his 30 years of space travel, he had seen many worlds. Most were rocks, some were gas giants. A few had water, but were too hot or too cold. This one was different. This one looked like home. "What about life?" he asked. Hannah was quiet for a moment. Her screen showed many numbers and graphs. She checked them twice. Then, 3 times. "Nothing, sir," she said. Her voice was confused. "No plants. No animals. No bacteria. No viruses. Nothing." Tay turned to look at her. "That is not possible." "I know, sir, but the readings are clear. The planet has everything needed for life. Air, water, good soil, but there is no life at all." The crew gathered around Hannah's station. There were 12 of them on the Times Horizon asterisk. They were the best scientists and explorers that humanity had. They had left Earth 5 years ago to find new worlds for humans to live on. Earth was dying. Too many people, too much pollution. Humans needed a new home. Wu, the biologist, pushed his glasses up his nose. He was an older man with gray hair and kind eyes. "Perhaps our machines are broken," he said. "I checked them this morning," replied Hannah. "They are working fine." "Then check again," said Tay. "A planet with air and water must have life. That is basic science." For the next 6 hours, the crew ran every test they could. They sent small robots down to the surface. The robots collected air samples, water samples, and soil samples. Everything came back clean. Too clean. There was not a single living thing on the entire planet. Tay sat in his chair and thought. He had studied many planets. He knew that life was hard to stop. On Earth, life existed in the hottest deserts and the coldest ice. Life grew in acid. Life grew in darkness. Life found a way, always, but not here. "I want to go down," he said finally. Hannah looked worried. "Sir, we do not know what is down there." "You just told me there is nothing down there," Tay replied. "That is the problem. I need to see it with my own eyes." The landing ship touched down on a wide plain. The ground was brown and soft, like good farming soil. The sky was light blue with white clouds. A gentle wind moved across the land. It was beautiful. It was peaceful. It was completely empty. Tay stepped out first. He wore a suit, even though the air was safe. He was a careful man. Behind him came Hannah, Wu, and a young pilot named Sue. They walked slowly across the ground. "It feels like Earth," said Sue. He was only 25 years old. He had been a child when they left Earth. He barely remembered it. "It looks like Earth before plants," said Wu. He bent down and picked up some soil. He let it fall through his fingers. Good soil. Rich with minerals. But nothing has ever grown here. Hannah walked to a small stream nearby. The water was clear and cold. She used her tools to test it. "Pure water," she said. "No bacteria. No algae. Nothing." They walked for hours. They found hills and valleys. They found lakes and rivers. They found everything a planet needed for life. But there was no life. Not even a single cell. When they returned to the ship that night, Tay called a meeting. "We have found something impossible," he said. "A world that is ready for life, but has no life. I do not understand it. But I know one thing. This planet could be home for millions of humans." Hannah raised her hand. "Sir, there must be a reason why nothing lives here. What if that reason kills us too?" It was a good question. Tay had thought about it all day. "We will stay for 30 days," he said. "We will test everything. If we find danger, we leave. If we find nothing, we call Earth and tell them what we found." The 30 days passed slowly. The crew explored every part of the planet they could reach. They climbed mountains. They swam in oceans. They dug deep into the ground. They found nothing alive, not in the water, not in the soil, not in the air. The planet was perfectly empty. On the last day, Tay stood on a hill and watched the sunset. The sky turned orange and pink and purple. It was beautiful. He felt a strange feeling in his heart. This world was waiting. He did not know how he knew this, but he felt it strongly. The planet was waiting for something. Hana came to stand beside him. "I have finished my final report," she said. "There is no danger here. No poison. No radiation. No disease. The planet is simply empty." "Why?" asked Tay. "That is what I cannot understand. Why is there nothing here?" Hana was quiet for a long time. Then she spoke softly. "Maybe it was always empty. Maybe life never started here. On Earth, life began by accident. A few chemicals mixed together in just the right way. Maybe that accident never happened on this world." End quote. Tay thought about her words. On Earth, scientists believed that life began billions of years ago. It started small, just tiny cells. Then those cells grew and changed over millions of years. They became plants and animals, and eventually humans. But it all started with one accident, one spark. "So this planet is waiting for its spark," he said. "Maybe," said Hana. "Or maybe the spark will never come." Tay looked at the empty land around him. He thought about Earth. He thought about the millions of people who needed a new home. He thought about the future. "We will send our report to Earth," he said. "We will tell them what we found. Then, we will wait for their answer." The message took 3 months to reach Earth. The answer took another 3 months to come back. During that time, the crew of the Horizon Times, stayed on the planet. They set up a small camp. They continued their tests. They found nothing new. When the answer finally came, Tay gathered everyone together. "Earth has decided," he said. "They are sending colony ships. 5,000 people will come here. They will try to make this planet their home." The crew was excited. They had done their job. They had found a new world for humanity. But Tay still felt that strange feeling. The planet was waiting, and he did not know what it was waiting for. As he walked back to his small tent that night, he looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, ships were already being prepared. People were packing their things. Children were saying goodbye to their friends. They were all coming here, to this empty world, to this silent planet. Tay hoped they knew what they were doing. Because he was not sure that he did. The colony ships arrived on a bright morning. There were 10 of them, each carrying 500 people. They came down from the sky like great metal birds, landing one after another on the empty plain. Captain Tay watched them from the hill where he liked to stand. After a year alone on this silent world, he was finally seeing other human faces. The doors of the first ship opened. People walked out slowly, looking around with wide eyes. Children held their parents' hands. Old people leaned on walking sticks. Young couples stood together and stared at the empty land. This was their new home. This was where they would build their future. A woman walked toward Tay. She was tall and strong, with short black hair and serious eyes. Her name was Yuna, and she was the leader of the colonists. "Captain Tay," she said, shaking his hand. "We have heard much about you. Your reports were very detailed. I tried to tell you everything." Tay replied. "But words cannot really describe this place. You have to feel it yourself." "I Tay with ready." Yuna looked around. The wind moved across the brown land. The sky was clear and blue. Everything was clean and beautiful and completely empty. "It is strange," she said quietly. "So much space. No trees. No grass. No birds. Just emptiness. You will get used to it, said Tay. But he was not sure if that was true. The colonists worked hard in the first weeks. They built houses and roads. They set up water systems and power generators. They created a small town in the middle of the empty plain. They called it New Hope. But the real work began when they tried to farm. Hana led the farming team. She had stayed on the planet with Tay, studying the soil and water. She knew more about this world than anyone else. The soil is perfect, she told the farmers on their first day. It has all the minerals that plants need. The water is clean, the sunlight is good. Everything should grow well here. The farmers smiled and nodded. They had brought seeds from Earth, wheat and rice, corn and beans, vegetables and fruits. They had enough seeds to plant fields that stretched for miles. They began with a small test garden. The farmers dug the soil carefully. They planted rows of seeds. They watered them every day. Then they waited. 1 week passed. Nothing happened. 2 weeks passed. The soil stayed brown and empty. 3 weeks passed. Not a single seed had grown. Hana did not understand. She checked the seeds. They were good seeds. She checked the soil again. It was perfect soil. She checked the water. It was clean water. Everything was right, but nothing grew. Maybe we need to wait longer, said one of the farmers, a kind old man named Day. He had been a farmer on Earth for 50 years. He knew how to grow things. Seeds do not take this long, Hana replied. Something is wrong. She took some seeds back to her small laboratory. She put them in Earth soil that she had brought from the ship. Within 3 days, small green leaves appeared. The seeds were fine. The problem was the planet. Wu came to help her study the problem. He spent days looking at the soil under his machines. He found something strange. The soil is dead, he said one evening. Not just empty. Dead. What do you mean? Asked Hana. On Earth, soil is alive. It is full of tiny living things, bacteria, fungi, small insects. These things break down dead plants and animals. They turn them into food that new plants can eat. Without them, plants cannot grow. Hana understood now. But this planet has no life. So the soil has no tiny helpers. Exactly, said Wu. The seeds do not know how to eat from this soil. They need bacteria to help them. But there are no bacteria here. This was a big problem. The colonists had brought seeds from Earth, but they had not brought soil. They had not thought they needed to. Earth soil was heavy and took up too much space on the ships. They had expected to use the soil on this new planet. Yuna called a meeting that night. All 5,000 colonists gathered in the center of New Hope. Tay stood at the front with Hana and Wu. We have found a problem, Yuna said. Her voice was calm but serious. Our crops will not grow. The crowd became very quiet. A child started to cry. Someone coughed nervously. The colonists had brought enough food for 2 years. But after that, they needed to grow their own food. If they could not farm, they would die. Hana explained the problem. She used simple words so everyone could understand. The people listened with worried faces. So what do we do? Asked a young man in the crowd. His name was Jin, and he was an engineer. Do we go back to Earth? We cannot go back, said Yuna. Earth does not have room for us anymore. That is why we came here. Then we will die here, said someone else. We cannot live without food. The meeting became loud and angry. People shouted questions and complaints. Children cried. Parents argued. Tay watched it all with a heavy heart. He had felt that this planet was waiting for something. Now he wondered if it was waiting to watch them fail. Old Day raised his hand. The crowd slowly became quiet. Everyone respected Day. He was the oldest person in the colony, and he had more farming experience than anyone. I have an idea, he said. His voice was soft but steady. On Earth, when soil is bad, we make it better. We add things to it. Dead plants, dead animals, waste from our bodies. These things bring life to dead soil. Hana's eyes grew wide. Composting, she said. You want to compost? Yes, said Day. We take everything that is alive and dying. We mix it with the soil. We give the soil life. It was a simple idea, but it might work. Over the next few months, the colonists tried everything. They collected all their food waste, vegetable skins, fruit cores, old bread. They put it all in the soil. They collected waste from the toilets. They added that too. It was not pleasant work, but they did it without complaining. Slowly, something began to change. Hana tested the soil every week. At first, there was no difference. The soil was still dead. But after 2 months, she found something. A tiny bacteria. Just one. But it was alive. It is working, she told Wu. Her hands were shaking with excitement. Life is starting, but it was not enough. After 6 months, they had only a tiny patch of living soil. The bacteria were growing, but very slowly. At this rate, it would take 100 years to have enough soil for farming. The colonists grew worried again. Their food supplies were going down. They had 18 months of food left. They needed a faster solution. Wu worked day and night. He studied the bacteria. He tried to make them grow faster. But nothing helped. The bacteria needed more life to eat. And there was not enough life on the planet. One evening, Wu sat alone in his laboratory. He was tired and sad. He looked at his hands. Old hands. Hands that had worked with living things for his whole life. And then he understood. He went to find Hana. He told her his idea. She did not want to believe it at first. But the more she thought about it, the more it made sense. We need to tell the others, she said quietly. I know, said Wu. But they will not want to hear it. They went to find Yuna. They explained what Wu had discovered. Yuna's face went pale. She sat down slowly. Are you sure? She asked. Yes, said Wu. The bacteria need life to grow. Real life. Our waste is not enough. We need to give them something more. Something that we have been keeping for ourselves. Yuna closed her eyes. She thought about the 5,000 people who trusted her. She thought about the children who played in the streets of New Hope. She thought about the future. We cannot ask people to do this, she said. We do not have a choice, said Wu. The planet needs life. And we are the only life here. 71. Outside, the sun was setting over the empty land. The sky turned beautiful colors. But no one was watching. They were all thinking about what came next. The planet was still waiting. And now they knew what it was waiting for. The meeting hall was full. Every person in New Hope had come. They sat on chairs and on the floor. They stood against the walls. Children sat on their parents' shoulders. Old people leaned on walking sticks. Everyone was waiting to hear what Yuna would say. Yuna stood at the front. Her face was tired. She had not slept well in many days. Next to her stood Wu and Hana. Behind them, Captain Tay watched with worried eyes. Thank you all for coming, Yuna began. I have something important to tell you. It will not be easy to hear. But we must be honest with each other. She explained the problem again. The soil was dead. Their food waste was helping. But not enough. The bacteria were growing too slowly. They needed something stronger to feed them. What do you mean by stronger? Asked Jin, the young engineer. He was standing near the front of the crowd. Wu stepped forward. The bacteria need protein, he said. Complex proteins. The kind that come from living bodies. From human bodies. The room became very quiet. People looked at each other with confused faces. I do not understand, said a woman named Mina. She was a young doctor with gentle eyes. Are you saying that we need to give our bodies to the soil? Yes, said Wu. His voice was very soft. When a person dies, their body is full of bacteria. Good bacteria. The kind that helps plants grow. If we bury our dead in the soil without boxes or burning, the bacteria will spread. The soil will come alive. Some people gasped. Others shook their heads. A few started to cry. "That is horrible," said one man. "You want us to throw our dead into the ground like animals?" "No," said Wu. "I want us to give our dead a purpose. On Earth, we burned bodies or put them in boxes. We wasted all that life. Here, we can use it. Our dead can help our living." The room exploded with angry voices. People shouted and argued. Some said it was wrong. Others said it was necessary. Parents held their children close. Old people sat quietly and thought. Old Day raised his hand. Slowly, the room became quiet again. "I am 83 years old," he said. His voice was calm and steady. "I have lived a good life. I will not live much longer. When I die, I want my body to do something useful. I want to help this planet grow." Everyone stared at him. He smiled gently. "We came here to make a new home," he continued. "We knew it would be hard. We knew we would have to sacrifice. This is just another sacrifice. A bigger one. But still, just a sacrifice." Mina, the young doctor, stood up. "But we cannot just kill people," she said. "We cannot sacrifice the living." "No one is asking anyone to die," said Yuna. "We are only talking about those who die naturally. Old people, sick people, people whose time has come. When they die, we will bury them in the fields. Their bodies will feed the soil." "Ah, and if that is not enough?" asked Jin. "What if we need more?" No one answered. They all knew the truth. 5,000 people were not enough. They would need many deaths to bring this planet to life. And deaths came slowly when people were young and healthy. The meeting ended without a decision. People went home to think. Families talked late into the night. Some said they would never agree to such a thing. Others said they had no choice. The colony was divided. 3 days later, Old Day got sick. He had a fever and a cough. Mina tried to help him, but his body was too old and too tired. He died on a quiet morning. With the sun shining through his window, his family gathered around his bed. His daughter cried. His grandchildren looked confused. They did not understand where their grandfather had gone. Yuna came to the house. She stood at the door with her head down. "I am sorry for your loss," she said. "Day was a good man, the best of us." Day's daughter looked at her. Her eyes were red from crying. "He told us what he wanted," she said. "He wanted to be buried in the fields. He wanted to help, and so they did it." They carried Old Day to a field near the edge of town. They dug a hole in the brown, dead soil. They placed his body inside without a box. They covered him with dirt. And they waited. For a week, nothing happened. The soil looked the same, brown and empty. Hana tested it every day. Still dead. Still waiting. But on the 10th day, she found something. Bacteria. Millions of them. Spreading out from where Day was buried. Moving through the soil, like tiny rivers of life. "It is working," she told Wu. Her voice was shaking. "It is really working." Word spread through the colony. People came to see the field. They stood around the place where Day was buried. The soil still looked brown. But under the surface, life was beginning. That night, the colonists gathered again. This time, there was less anger. They had seen the results. They understood what had to be done. "We need volunteers," said Yuna. "Not people to die, but people who are willing to give their bodies when their time comes. People who want to help the planet." One by one, hands went up. Old people mostly. People who knew they did not have many years left. But also some younger people. People who were sick. People who had no family. People who simply believed in the cause. Mina counted the hands. 237 people had volunteered. She wrote down their names in a book. "Thank you," said Yuna. Her eyes were wet with tears. "You are heroes. All of you. Future generations will remember your names." Over the next year, 34 of those volunteers died, some from old age, some from sickness, some from accidents. Each one was buried in the fields. Each one added life to the dead soil. The bacteria spread further and further. Hannah made maps showing where they were growing. It was like watching a fire spread across dry land. But this fire brought life instead of death. After 18 months, they tried planting seeds again. They chose a small patch of soil where the bacteria were strongest. They planted wheat seeds and watered them carefully. On the 5th day, small green shoots appeared, tiny leaves pushing up through the brown soil. The colonists gathered around and watched with tears in their eyes. It was the most beautiful thing they had ever seen. Tay stood apart from the crowd. He remembered the feeling he had when he first arrived on this planet, the feeling that the world was waiting. Now he understood what it had been waiting for. Not just any life, human sacrifice, human love. The wheat grew strong and tall. By the end of the season, they had their first harvest. It was small, just enough to fill a few bags. But it was a beginning. At the harvest celebration, Yuna gave a speech. She talked about the volunteers who had given their bodies. She read their names one by one. The crowd was silent. Some people cried. Others smiled through their tears. "We are not just growing food," she said. "We are growing a world. And that world is made from us. From our bodies. From our love. From our sacrifice." She raised a piece of bread made from the new wheat. It was golden and warm. She broke it into pieces and passed it around. "Eat this," she said, "and remember those who made it possible." The colonists ate the bread. It tasted like hope. It tasted like the future. It tasted like home. But they all knew the work was just beginning. They had one field of living soil. They needed thousands. They had grown one crop of wheat. They needed forests and farms and gardens. The planet was still mostly empty. Still mostly dead. Still mostly waiting. And they knew what they had to give to fill it. That night, Tay walked alone to the hill where he liked to stand. He looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth was dying. Humans were running out of space and time. They were looking to the stars for salvation. And here, on this silent planet, salvation was growing. Slowly. Painfully. One death at a time. Tay thought about the future. He thought about children who would run through green forests. He thought about families who would swim in clean lakes. He thought about a world full of life, a world that humans had created. Not with machines, not with technology, but with their own bodies. It was the most human thing he could imagine. And it made him proud to be one of them. 10 years passed on the silent planet. New Hope was no longer just a small town. It had grown into a city with tall buildings and wide streets. More ships had come from Earth, bringing 10,000 new colonists. The population was now 15,000, and it was still growing. But more importantly, the planet was changing. Hannah stood on the old hill where Captain Tay used to watch the sunset. She was no longer young. Her hair had turned gray at the edges. Her hands had grown rough from years of working in the soil, but her eyes were still sharp. And her heart was still full of wonder. Below her, she could see fields of green. Wheat and rice and corn swaying in the gentle wind. Vegetables growing in neat rows. Fruit trees standing tall with branches full of color. It was beautiful, it was alive, and it was all made from human sacrifice. In 10 years, 312 colonists had died. Each one had been buried in the fields. Each one had fed the soil with their body. Each one had become part of the planet. Their names were written on a great stone wall in the center of the city. People came every day to read the names and say thank you. But burying the dead was not enough. The colonists had learned that lesson early. To truly bring this world to life, they had to give more. Much more. Jin, the young engineer, had been the first to think of new ways. He was no longer young either. He had a wife and 2 children. He had built half the buildings in New Hope. But his greatest work was something much smaller. Blood, he had said at a meeting 5 years ago. Human blood is full of life, full of bacteria and proteins. We can use it to help plants grow. At first, people were afraid. Giving blood hurt. It made you weak. But Jin showed them that it could be done safely. Every adult could give a small amount of blood each month. It was not much from one person, but from 15,000 people, it was a river of life. They built special buildings where people could donate blood. The blood was mixed with water and spread across the fields. The plants grew stronger and faster. The soil became richer. Life spread further across the planet. But blood was just the beginning. Mina, the doctor, found other ways to help. She collected hair from every haircut. She saved fingernail clippings. She gathered skin that fell off when people washed. All of these things were full of protein. All of these things could feed the soil. We are not just living on this planet, she told people. We are becoming part of it. Every piece of us that falls away becomes part of this world. Some people found this idea strange. On Earth, they had thrown away such things. They had not thought of them as valuable. But here, everything human was precious. Everything human was life. The colonists built special systems to collect waste. Not just food waste, but all waste. Everything that came from human bodies went back to the soil. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was lost. Jin designed machines that could spread this material across the land. Great machines that rolled over the empty brown earth, leaving paths of life behind them. Wherever the machines went, bacteria followed. And wherever bacteria went, plants could grow. But the biggest change came from the children. The first generation of children born on the planet were different. They had grown up knowing the truth. They had grown up eating food made from human sacrifice. They had grown up understanding that their bodies were not just their own. Their bodies belonged to the planet too. A young girl named Bora started a new tradition. She was only 12 years old, but she was very wise for her age. Her grandmother had been one of the first volunteers to die. Her body had helped grow the first wheat. I want to give something while I am alive, Bora said at a children's meeting. I do not want to wait until I die. She started a garden in her backyard. Every day, she added something from her body. A few hairs, some fingernails, spit, tears. Small things that did not hurt to give, but she gave them with love. And her garden grew better than any other garden in the city. Other children copied her. Soon, every child in New Hope had a personal garden. A garden fed by their own bodies. A garden that was truly theirs. The parents watched with pride. This was the future. This was what it meant to be human. On this world. Tay was old now. He spent most of his time in a small house near the edge of the city. He could not walk far anymore. His body was tired from years of work. But his mind was still sharp. One evening, Hana came to visit him. She brought bread and vegetables from her garden. They sat together and watched the sunset through his window. Do you remember when we first landed here? She asked. I remember, said Tay. The world was empty, silent, dead. And now look at it, said Hana. Green fields. Growing forests. Life everywhere. Tay nodded slowly. We did something impossible, he said. We created an ecosystem from nothing. We became the foundation of a world. Not nothing, said Hana. We created it from ourselves, from our bodies, from our sacrifice, from our love. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, children were playing in a small park. Their laughter drifted through the window. Somewhere, a bird was singing. A real bird. They had brought eggs from Earth, and now birds lived on the planet too. Small brown birds that ate insects and sang in the mornings. I have been thinking about what happens next, said Tay. The planet is coming alive. But we are still just one city. One small spot of green in a brown world. It will spread, said Hana. Every year, we reach further. Every year, more of the planet comes alive. But it is so slow, said Tai. At this rate, it will take thousands of years to cover the whole world. Hana smiled. Then it will take thousands of years. We are not in a hurry. We have time. Tay looked at her. He saw the gray in her hair. He saw the lines on her face. He thought about all the people who had died to make this world grow. He thought about all the people who would die in the future. Thousands and thousands of lives given to the soil. Do you think it is worth it? He asked. All this sacrifice, all this pain, is it worth it? Who? Hana thought for a long moment. Then she spoke quietly. My grandmother died on Earth, she said. She was burned, and her ashes were scattered in the ocean. She fed nothing. She helped nothing. She just disappeared. She paused and looked out the window at the green fields. Here, when I die, I will become part of this world. I will feed the soil. I will help plants grow. Children will eat food that my body helped create. My grandchildren. Their grandchildren. Forever. She turned back to Tay with tears in her eyes. That is not sacrifice, she said. That is immortality. Tay felt tears in his own eyes. He reached out and took her hand. When I die, he said, I want to be buried in the field where old Day was buried. Where it all began. Can you make sure of that? Day was no. Farm. Day was no. Confarmant. Day was no farmant. I promise, said Hana. They sat together until the sun went down and the stars came out. The same stars that Tay had looked at for so many years. The same stars that watched over Earth. The same stars that would watch over this planet for billions of years to come. And somewhere in the darkness, the planet was growing. Cell by cell, life by life, human by human. Becoming something new, becoming something beautiful, becoming home. 200 years had passed since the first colonists landed on the silent planet. The world that was once empty was empty no longer. Captain Nari stood at the entrance of the great museum in New Hope City. The city had grown into a place of 1 million people. Tall towers reached toward the sky. Wide parks stretched between buildings. Trees lined every street. Flowers bloomed in every garden. It was a beautiful city. A living city. A city that had been built on sacrifice. Nari was young, only 30 years old. She had black hair and bright eyes. She commanded the newest exploration ship, the Times Dawn Asterisk. Her job was to explore the far reaches of the planet, to find new places where life was growing, to map the changes that happened every year. But today, she was not working. Today was Memorial Day, the most important holiday on the planet. She walked into the museum slowly. The walls were covered with names. Thousands and thousands of names. Every person who had died and given their body to the planet. The first name was Day, the old farmer who had started it all. His name was carved in gold letters at the very top of the wall. Nari found the name she was looking for. Park Tay, the captain who had discovered this world. He had died 190 years ago, but his body was still part of the planet. His atoms were in the trees and the grass and the flowers. His atoms were in the food that people ate. His atoms were everywhere. Thank you, Nari whispered. It was what everyone said when they visited the memorial. Thank you for giving us this world. She walked through the museum slowly. There were pictures and videos from the early days. She saw images of the empty brown land. She saw the first green shoots pushing up from the soil. She saw the faces of the original colonists. Tired faces. Worried faces. Brave faces. In one room, there was a display about how the planet had changed. Maps showed the spread of life over 200 years. In the beginning, there was just one small green spot. The fields around New Hope. Then the green spread outward. Year by year. First slowly. Then faster and faster. Now, most of the planet was covered in life. Great forests spread across the land. Grasslands stretched from horizon to horizon. Lakes and rivers were full of fish. The sky was full of birds. Animals ran through the wilderness. Small animals and big animals. Predators and prey. A whole ecosystem. All of it had come from humans. Every living thing on the planet had started from bacteria that came from human bodies. The bacteria had evolved over 200 years. They had changed and grown and become new things. Single cells had become plants. Plants had become food for animals. Animals had become food for other animals. The chain of life had grown longer and longer. Scientists called it the fastest evolution in known history. On Earth, it had taken billions of years for life to become complex. Here, it had taken only 2 centuries. The bacteria from human bodies had mixed with the unique chemistry of the planet. They had changed in ways that no one had expected. They had created something new, something beautiful, something impossible. Nari left the museum and walked through the city. Children were playing in a park. Their laughter filled the air. Dogs ran beside them. Real dogs. Descendants of dogs that had been brought from Earth. The dogs were different now. They had changed over generations. Their fur was thicker. Their eyes were bigger. They had adapted to this new world. Everything had adapted. Everything had changed. Even the humans. Nari looked at her own hands. Her skin was slightly different from the skin of people on Earth. It was better at handling the sunlight here. Her lungs were slightly larger. They were better at breathing this air. Her body had changed over generations. She was still human, but she was also something new. She walked to the edge of the city. The Great Wall of Names ended here. But beyond the wall, there was something else. A forest. The oldest forest on the planet, the forest that had grown from the first fields where the volunteers were buried. Nari walked into the forest alone. The trees were tall and strong. Their leaves made a green ceiling above her head. Sunlight came through in golden spots. Birds sang in the branches. Small animals ran through the undergrowth. It was peaceful. It was alive. She came to a clearing in the center of the forest. There was a stone here. A simple stone, with simple words. Here lies the first field. Here began the world. Nari sat down beside the stone. She put her hand on the ground. The soil was soft and warm. It was full of life. Millions of bacteria. Thousands of insects. Hundreds of plants. All of it connected. All of it alive. "Hello, ancestors," she said quietly. "I wanted to thank you for everything." The wind moved through the trees. It almost sounded like a reply. Nari thought about her own life. She had a family, a husband and 2 children. When she died, her body would go to the soil like all the others. Her atoms would become part of the planet. Her descendants would eat food grown from her body. She would live forever in the world she loved. It was not a sad thought. It was a beautiful thought. This was what it meant to be human on this world. Death was not an ending. It was a gift. A gift to the future. A gift to the children who would come after. She stood up and looked around the forest. 200 years ago, there was nothing here. Just empty brown soil and silent wind. Now there was life everywhere. Life that had come from human sacrifice. Life that would continue for millions of years. The silent planet was silent no more. When Nari returned to the city, she found her crew waiting for her. They were young people, full of energy and hope. They were ready to explore the far corners of the world. "Captain," said her first officer, a young man named Han. "The ship is ready." "Where do we go today?" Nari smiled. "North," she said. "To the new forests. I want to see how far the life has spread." They boarded the Dawn Times and flew north. Below them, the land changed from city to farmland to wilderness. Green everywhere. Life everywhere. A whole world coming alive. They flew for hours. The forests below became thicker. The animals became stranger. New species were appearing every year. Species that had never existed before. The planet was creating itself. Evolution was happening in real time. Finally, they reached the northern edge of the living world. Here, the green stopped. Beyond this line, the land was still brown and empty. Still waiting, still silent, but not for long. Nari could see the machines working on the horizon. Great machines that spread bacteria and organic material across the dead soil. Human crews worked beside them. Volunteers who lived at the edge of the world, pushing the life further north, inch by inch, mile by mile, year by year. How long until the whole planet is alive? Asked Han. Another 100 years, said Nari. Maybe 200. But it will happen. We will cover this whole world with life. She looked at the empty land ahead. It looked just like the images from 200 years ago. When Captain Tay first landed on this silent planet. When Hana first tested the dead soil. When Old Day first suggested that human bodies could bring life, they had been scared then. Uncertain. They did not know if their plan would work. They did not know if their sacrifices would mean anything. They had taken a chance. A desperate chance. And it had worked. Now, 200 years later, their descendants were finishing what they started, spreading life across an entire planet. Creating an ecosystem from nothing. Becoming the ancestors of every living thing on this world. It was the most human thing in the universe. The desire to create, the willingness to sacrifice, the dream of something better for children not yet born. This was what made humans special, not their technology, not their intelligence, but their love. Nari turned the ship around and headed home. Below her, the green world stretched out in all directions. Beautiful and alive and full of hope, she thought about Captain Tay and his crew. She thought about Old Day and his sacrifice. She thought about Hana and Wu and Mina and Jin and Bora and all the others. Thousands and thousands of people who had given everything so that this world could live. They were all part of the planet now. Their bodies had fed the soil. Their atoms had become plants and animals and forests and oceans. They had become immortal in the most real way possible. And so would Nari, someday. And so would her children. And so would every human who lived on this world. They had not just colonized a planet. They had become its ancestors, its foundation, its heart. The silent planet was their gift to the universe. A world made of human love. A world that would live forever. And somewhere in the soil, in the trees, in the wind, the ancestors were watching. And they were proud.